The divine monster of white chakra just pulverized the hidden leaf village in the blink of an eye. Bro, you gotta look at this scene because it makes absolutely zero sense. The great hero of our childhood turned into the biggest nightmare of the modern ninja world. Naruto was supposed to be the ultimate symbol of hope, but he became pure destruction itself. He's crumbled in seconds, and the only one to blame for this massacre is the Seventh Hokage. Let's rewind the tape to understand this total insanity. It all started with a top-secret mission that went horribly wrong. Boruto and Kawaki found an ancient scroll hidden away in Kagaya's ruins. They brought the artifact back to the village, and all hell broke loose. The seal shattered, and a transcendental energy flooded the place. We all thought losing Kurama was rock bottom for Naruto, but the truth was way darker. The scroll contained the original essence of the divine tree, and this power needed an empty vessel to exist. Naruto's chakra network was fragile, making him the absolute perfect target for this energy. The force invaded his chest, and an unbearable pain took over his mind. The hero felt his knees, and the whole world held its breath. Right then, the Hokage's mind snapped, and a blinding white light tore through the sky over Konoha. This wasn't some dark power or an aura of hatred, because the energy was freakishly clean and divine. Naruto's body started levitating, and the villagers looked up in awe and pure terror. His silhouette was swallowed by celestial glow, and the physical form of the chakra began to materialize. The birth of the beast was just getting started, and the worst was yet to come. That's when the first tail of pure light whipped through the air and sliced the Hokage monument right in half. Shikamaru tried to use a shadow jutsu, but the divine light melted the technique in seconds. This chakra wasn't made of irrational rage, but of an absolute and untouchable apathy. Naruto was enraged in a godlike way because he simply started seeing humans as a plague. This was the real threat, and you're about to see how things spin completely out of control. The evolution kept going, and the tails sprouted one by one for Naruto's back while the village crumbled to pieces. Boruto tried screaming for his dad, but his voice was drowned out by a crushing spiritual pressure. The 9th tail appeared, and then the 10th, and the energy seemed completely endless. The white chakra lit up the night like an artificial sun, and the 11th tail finally awakened. The power was so absurd that gravity around the village simply ceased to exist. The biggest plot twist is that this transcendent energy wiped out all of Naruto's emotional memories. He looked at Hinata running toward him and didn't see a wife but a meaningless insect. The Hokage's face was calm and angelic, but his actions were purely genocidal. He raised a single hand, and a silver shockwave wiped out entire city blocks of the leaf. The divine purification had begun, and nobody was ready for the sheer scale of that massacre. Dude, the feeling of despair was so real because the strongest ninjas were dropping like flies without even touching the enemy. The chakra of the 11th tail acted as an absolute barrier and disintegrated any matter that got close. Sasuke wasn't in the village, and the enraged Naruto, in his purest form, had a clear path to judge humanity. He charged up a Bijou Dama unlike anything you've ever seen because it was a crystal clear and lethal sphere of light. The divine sphere floated down slowly and touched the soil of Konoha without making a single sound. A dome of white energy expanded and vaporized houses and streets and people in a deeply disturbing silence. The Hidden Leaf Village was wiped off the map, and all that was left was a smoking, glowing crater right beneath the celestial monster's feet. The ninja world was doomed, and the force of the 11th tail craved even more purified souls. Right in the middle of the glowing dust and the rubble, an unexpected survivor crawled out from the underground. Orochimaru watched the god of destruction floating up in the sky, and a twisted smile crept across his pale face. He knew regular ninjutsu wouldn't even scratch that transcendental light, so he made the most dangerous decision of his entire life. The snake Sannin brought his blood-stained hands together and prepared a forbidden seal that would change the destiny of this war. The only man capable of clashing with a god needed to come back from the dead, and the sacred rule of the Edo Tensei was about to be broken forever. The wind blew ashes across the giant crater, and Orochimaru smiled as blood dripped onto the ruined ground. He knew his life was going to end right there, while the celestial monster floated and the white light burned the night. Bro, you gotta understand the weight of this decision, because the snake Sannin drew a seal and the earth shook. Death was the only path to salvation because Orochimaru always sought immortality, but now he was embracing his own end. The paradox was bizarre and pure genius at the same time. So he slammed his hands on the ground, and the forbidden technique began. Naruto's divine light illuminated his pale face, and the darkness of the underworld answered the call. A black coffin tore through the earth and rose up, and the lid fell as a heavy aura leaked into the air. The god of shinobi was back, but he was completely different, and Orochimaru spit blood because the price of his summoning was destroying his organs. The Sannin's soul started to burn, and the power transfer happened, breaking the very limits of life. Orochimaru didn't just use a normal sacrifice, because he used his own vital essence to revive the ultimate legend. He injected the curse seal directly into the core of the Edo Tensei, and Hashirama's body started suffering severe mutations. The first Hokage's skin cracked, and black lines covered his face until his eyes snapped open with a brutal red glow. The immortality of the Edo Tensei merged with the Sannin's dark magic, and a bestial force was born to face the divine chaos. Orochimaru's body turned to dust and was carried away by the wind, but his insane legacy stood tall. Hashirama Senju took a step out of the coffin, and the ground cracked under his feet as he looked up. He saw Naruto's divine silhouette floating in the sky, and the 11 tails of white light whipping the air fiercely. The first Hokage understood the gravity of the situation instantly because he felt that nature around him was dead, and that thing's chakra was an absurd abomination. Dude Hashirama's presence was so oppressive that gravity felt twice as heavy in that totally destroyed wasteland. He clapped his hands together, and the sound echoed through the entire crater, catching the celestial beast's attention immediately. Naruto turned his apathetic face toward the enemy, and the 11th tail pointed at the Senju like a true divine spear. The clash between the god of creation and the god of destruction was about to start, and you have no idea how insane this fight is going to be. The pure chakra monster didn't even hesitate and fired a lethal light ray straight at his new opponent's chest. The beam crossed the distance in a millisecond, but the first Hokage didn't even try to dodge because he wanted to test the enemy's strength. The ray pierced his immortal body and blew off half his torso, but the cursed technique's regeneration kicked in instantly and closed the hole. The paper flesh remade itself, mixed with a dark and poisonous wood, and the Senju's smile proved he was ready for war. Hashirama channeled the corrupted nature energy and activated his sage mode, but the marks on his face weren't the normal ones from the past. Orochimaru's residual power altered the natural chakra, and the first Hokage awakened an unprecedented and macabre form. Black twisted trees sprouted from the dead earth, and thorny wood whips shot toward the sky to trap the light abomination. Naruto moved a single finger, and a celestial barrier disintegrated the trunks, but that initial attack was just a genius strategic distraction. The real plan was happening underground because deadly roots were traveling beneath the earth to create an absolutely indestructible trap. You're going to freak out when you see the brutal intelligence of the shinobi god in action against a totally uncontrollable divine force. Hashirama popped up behind Naruto using a wood clone and delivered a titanic punch, completely coated in corrupted nature chakra. The hit connected, and the shock wave made the air explode, but the pure light barrier absorbed almost all the impact and protected the vessel's intact body. Naruto retaliated with a crazy spin, and the 11 tails swept the airspace, cutting the wood clone into thousands of tiny pieces. The beast's speed was incalculable, and the real Hashirama realized that normal physical attacks were totally useless against that transcendental and impenetrable aura. He fell back and landed heavy on the rubble, deciding it was time to stop testing and unleash the absolute max power of that forbidden resurrection. The Earth's crust started shaking violently, and a monstrous shadow swallowed the enemy's white light in the sky. The Senju screamed, and the black veins on his face throbbed hard while he invoked the sage art of the Black Forest. The putrid wood merged together and took the shape of a gigantic golem with thousands of arms and an incredibly deadly thorn armor. The cursed wood monster roared, and the white chakra beast shined even brighter in response to that supreme, titanic challenge. The impact between the two gods crushed whatever was left of the earth, and the true battle for the survival of the ninja world finally began with full force. The golem tried to crush Naruto, but the divine light melted the wooden arms in seconds, and the abomination hit back without any mercy. The Seventh Hokage opened his mouth, and concentrated a celestial bijou, Dhamma, so massive that the sun itself looked like a joke next to it. Hashirama looked at the sphere of pure obliteration and realized his immortal body would turn to eternal dust if that hit him directly and destroyed his vital core. The divine sphere was fired, and the flash blinded the entire world, leaving the first Hokage's destiny hanging by a millimeter. The divine bijou, Dhamma, swallowed the gigantic golem, and a silent explosion disintegrated the landscape for miles. Bro, you think Hashirama turned to dust, but the genius of the shinobi god shined through the chaos and absolute destruction. He fused his own soul with the core of the wooden monster and channeled all of Orochimaru's corrupted energy to create a living and pulsing shield. The impact tore the earth all the way down to the magma mantle, but that dark defense held its ground in a bizarre and miraculous way. The cosmic dust settled, and the golem's armor was melted because the heat from the celestial light was totally insane. But the blackwood pulsed like a diseased heart, and the destroyed arms grew back with a terrifying and unnatural speed. Hashirama spit black blood from his paper mouth and laughed out loud, because he discovered that the corrupted chakra neutralized the beast's purification. That was the flaw in the white light's perfection, and the first Hokage was ready to exploit that fatal and lethal mistake. The wooden monster roared and lunged toward the sky, and the earth shook in a way you have never seen before. Thousands of poisoned roots shot out from the giant's back and formed a titanic web to trap the floating and pitiless abomination. Naruto showed zero emotion and moved the 11 glowing tails to slice through the attack with surgical and divine precision. The blades of light cut the black wood, but the Sannin's venom melted the tips of the white chakra and caused real and painful damage. Dude Naruto's apathetic expression finally shifted, and a slight tremor of fury crossed the Seventh Hokage's angelic face. He felt the dark contamination touching his divine chakra network, and that was unacceptable for a creature of light so pure and genocidal. The vessel raised both hands, and the sky suddenly went dark because the spiritual pressure crushed the clouds and the very air. A rain of silver needles began to fall, and every single drop pierced the ground like a meteor, and the war zone turned into an absolute hell. The corrupted golem raised its multiple arms and formed a thick-shelled dome to defend the core where the Senju was hiding. The needles of light pierced the cursed wood, and the sound of the impact felt like a storm of bombs falling without end and without mercy. Hashirama realized that staying on the defensive was pure suicide, so he ordered the macabre statue to dive headfirst into the storm. The wooden giant sprinted, and the ground exploded with every step, and the distance between the two gods closed in an extreme and dangerous way. The first Hokage channeled all the chakra from his dark sage mode into his summon's right fist and delivered a brutal uppercut. The colossal statue hit Naruto's light shield, and the collision generated a vacuum wave that tore through the planet's very atmosphere. The 11 tails wrapped around the wooden arms and tried to rip the giant's limbs off with purely divine and overwhelming strength. Bro, the physical power of the white beast was insane, but the venom from the roots was weakening the celestial barriers second by second. The Senju knew that defeating infinite energy was impossible, so he aimed for the most vulnerable spot of that relentless entity. He needed to rip Naruto's physical body out from inside that light armor and break the connection with the transcendental and alien power. Hashirama forced the golem to drop its guard and took a direct hit from 3 tails that pierced right through the cursed wooden chest. This insane move was a perfect trap, and now you're going to see the genius of this bloody and strategic sacrifice. The light tails got stuck inside the giant's trunk because the poison sap worked like a black and lethal glue. Naruto tried to pull the energy back, but the Edo Tensei's corruption sealed the beast's movement for a single and precious moment. The golem grabbed the divine chakra sphere with its remaining hands and squeezed with colossal and pitiless force. The white light began to crack, and the sound of breaking glass echoed through the crater, and the impenetrable shield finally gave way a little. Dude, the first Hokage jumped from inside the wooden core and ran across his own golem's massive arms toward the enemy. He was covered in cursed marks, and his speed was a black blur, crossing the lethal distance in a quick breath. Naruto blinked and tried to fire a beam of pure energy from his eye, but the Senju dodged by a millimeter, and the light only cut the wind. Hashirama came face to face with the floating vessel, and the divine aura burnt the undead's paper skin immediately. The Edo Tensei body began to turn to ash just by getting close, but the shinobi god ignored the pain and reached out with his right hand. He needed to pierce the final layer of white light to touch Naruto's chest and rip the beast's chakra hard out from there. Hashirama dug his fingers into the pure energy, and his hand began to melt to the bone while he screamed with savage fury. Black blood splattered onto the celestial aura, and the first Hokage's skeletal fingers finally touched the Seventh Hokage's orange jacket. Victory seemed certain, and the Senju prepared a chakra suppression seal, snuff out the 11th tail once and for all. But Naruto grabbed Hashirama's skeletal wrist with superhuman strength, and his blue eyes glowed with a bizarre darkness from inside the light. The 7th Hokage's chest opened up like a macabre flower, and an ancestral and divine voice whispered directly into the Senju's mind. The deity's true form awakened from inside the hero's body, and the first Hokage realized too late that he had just unleashed the end of the world. The voice echoed, and Hashirama froze in his tracks. Naruto's chest split wide open in a core of pure darkness pulsed inside the white light. The divine entity wasn't just chakra, because it possessed an ancient and ruthless consciousness. Hashirama tried to pull his arm away, but the monster's strength crushed the shinobi god's bones in seconds. The black core was the real parasite, and the 7th Hokage's body was nothing but an empty shell. The ancestral entity sensed the poison threat and decided to obliterate the first Hokage once and for all. Space warped around them, and a white Bijudama began to form right from the exposed core. The lethal sphere grew inches from Senju's face, and the insane heat melted his cursed skin. The detonation was at point-blank range, and the sound of the impact simply erased the hearing of every living being on the planet. Hashirama's immortal body was swallowed by the light of pure obliteration, and his paper flesh turned to dust instantly. Orochimaru's poison evaporated, and the giant wood golem crashed to the ground dead and totally dried up. The celestial beast thought victory was guaranteed, but the god of shinobi is an expert at cheating death. The divine dust was still shimmering in the air, and the entity let its guard down for a single millisecond of arrogance. The Edo Tensei dust spread across the battlefield, but Hashirama's soul still controlled every black particle of that sand. The first Hokage didn't need a whole body because his will of fire was stronger than divine disintegration. The ashes flew with the wind and gathered on Naruto's back with a terrifying and stealthy speed. The suicidal sacrifice was planned from the start, and the Senju let his body be destroyed just to become an invisible cloud. The cursed particles stuck to the white light armor and began to infect the barrier from the outside in. The beast roared in pain because the poisoned ashes burned the celestial chakra like pure lethal acid. The dust took the form of dark chains and trapped the entity's 11 tails in an inescapable and deadly embrace. The divine fury exploded, and Naruto began to spin in the air to rip the ash chains off his body. He fired light beams in every direction, and the earth kept vaporizing, but the Edo Tensei seal tightened more and more. Hashirama recreated the top half of his face directly from the ashes and sank his teeth into the 7th Hokage's neck with animal strength. The undead's poisonous blood flowed into the vessel's chakra network and paralyzed the black core immediately. The paralysis was a shock to the monster, and the transcendental aura flickered and lost stability for the first time. Hashirama seized the opening and shoved his cursed dust arms straight into the black hole in the fallen hero's chest. He needed to find Naruto's original soul buried in that ocean of apathy and absolute destruction. The first Hokage plunged his own vital essence into the darkness, and the cold of that bizarre dimension froze his mind on the spot. The monster's inner space was an infinite abyss of blinding light and deathly desperate silence. Hashirama felt through the void and sensed the real Naruto curled up in the center of that hell and bound by pure crystal chains. The 7th Hokage was crying tears of blood because he saw the destruction of the world and could do nothing to stop it. The Senju grabbed the young man's shoulders and tried to pull his soul out of that divine and unbreakable prison. The ancestral entity noticed the mental invasion and attacked the first Hokage's soul with crushing psychological pressure. Memories of massacres and millennial wars flooded Hashirama's head and tried to break the sanity of Konoha's founder. But the shinobi god's determination was an untouchable rock, and he used Orochimaru's hatred to repel the mental invasion. He shattered the crystal chains with the raw strength of the cursed mark and finally freed Naruto's consciousness. The awakening of the original mind caused a short circuit in the perfect symbiosis, and the physical monster's body completely collapsed in the real world. The 11 tails of white. Light began to lash out at themselves, and Naruto's flesh cracked and gushed pure chakra through the cuts. The beast screamed and tried to expel Senju's ashes, but the core invasion deactivated the divine and impenetrable defense system. Hashirama smiled in the spiritual world and prepared the final trigger to imprison the creature before it could regenerate. Victory was in his hands, but the transcendental entity revealed its last card, and the game turned completely upside down. The black core absorbed the surrounding light and transformed into a singularity of absolute and hungry gravity. The monster sucked in Hashirama's ashes and began to devour the Edo Tensei soul itself to heal its mortal wounds. The first Hokage realized his genius plan was fueling the final evolution of the 11th tail. The singularity devoured Senju's arm in the spiritual world, and the ancestral voice echoed, laughing at humanity's useless resistance. Hashirama looked at the crying Naruto and understood that the only way to stop that god was to erase his own existence from history. The founder of Konoha did not back down and dived headfirst into the hungry core with a forbidden seal in his hands. The ultimate sacrifice began, and the white light flashed brightly before the absolute apocalypse. Hashirama dove headfirst into the singularity, and absolute gravity tried to rip his soul to shreds. Man, the spiritual pain was beyond words, but the founder of Konoha held onto that forbidden seal with brutal strength. He knew there was no turning back, and the black core swallowed the Edo Tensei's essence. The darkness tried to devour his mind, but the will of fire burned brighter than ever. The god of shinobi used his own immortal soul as a lethal catalyst, and the magic happened. Orochimaru's seal mixed with the divine light, and a bizarre chemical reaction began to destroy the parasite. The ancestral entity realized the danger and tried to spit the first Hokage out of the black core. But the cursed ashes stuck to the walls of the spiritual dimension, and the trap was perfectly shut. The clash between corrupted nature chakra and transcendental light tore through space and time. A dimensional rift opened inside Naruto's chest and started sucking in the celestial monster's energy. The 11 white tails whipped the air in despair, and the divine creature screamed with a deafening voice. The alien force tried to cling to the vessel's chakra network, but the poison weakened the beast's grip. Dude, the entity went into a total panic because it had never faced death before. It channeled all its remaining light to pulverize the invading spirit, and Hashirama truly began to fade away. The first Hokage endured the pure obliteration and smiled at Naruto's original consciousness one last time. He activated the Twilight Seal, and the macabre technique claimed the maximum and final price. The shinobi god soul was erased from existence, and the seal exploded from the inside out with titanic force. The dimensional rift swallowed the ancestral consciousness, and the parasite was dragged into the eternal void without mercy. The black core imploded, and the divine light suffered a total collapse in the physical world while silence dominated the crater. A blinding flash swept across what was left of the land, and the night swallowed the glow forever. The dust settled slowly, and gravity returned to normal, and the crushing pressure simply vanished from the air. The white light armor cracked like fragile glass, and the pieces fell and turned into smoke. The 11 tails crumbled, and the angelic aura was wiped from the universe, and the nightmare was finally over. The Seventh Hokage's monstrous form ceased to exist, and the cloudy sky appeared again over the rubble. Naruto's body plummeted from the clouds like a broken doll, and the freefall felt like an eternity. He slammed into the destroyed ground of Konoha, and the impact kicked up a cloud of ash and dry earth. The hero was completely unconscious, and blood leaked from his chest, but he was still breathing. The Transcendental light abandoned his mortal flesh, and the Leaf Village was saved from a cosmic annihilation. Hours passed, and the cold wind blew over the gigantic and lonely crater. The Seventh Hokage opened his eyes slowly and coughed up a lot of blood, trying to understand what had happened. He sat up in the rubble and looked at his own shaking hands, and the memory of the massacre flooded his mind. Grief and guilt crushed the hero's heart, but his worst nightmare was yet to come. Naruto brought his hands together instinctively and tried to mold some chakra to heal the fatal wounds in his chest. But the void inside him was absolute, and not a single drop of energy answered the ninja's mental command. He tried again and pushed his body to the limit, but the internal flow was completely dead and silent. Hashirama Seal saved the world, but the price of that miracle was charged directly from the savior's soul. The brutal truth hit like a meteor, and Naruto realized that his chakra network was totally carbonized. The divine light burned the energy channels forever, and the strongest man in the world became an ordinary human. He couldn't even make a simple shadow clone, and the ultimate vulnerability took over the Seventh Hokage. The ninja world was left without any protection, and the Leaf's enemies would discover this lethal weakness very soon. The hero looked at the ruined horizon and realized that a new era of darkness and inevitable wars had just begun. Man, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, because your support is key for the project to grow. There's another insane video full of mysteries waiting for you on the channel, so click there and watch it now. Thanks a lot for the company, and I will see you in the next story.